So recently, I wound up in a Discord community that was interested in Watamote, an anime about a girl named Tomoko who's extremely socially anxious and desperate to be well-liked, so I decided to watch it. Any additional context isn't required for this because it is what it appears as. The footage I'm showing on screen right now is basically all the show is. That is super appealing to me. A show where all the interesting stuff happens in a character's head would emphasize loneliness and depression very well. That was my hope, and it didn't deliver. I have a lot of suggestions as to how it could work, but first, here's the best example of why it doesn't. In episode 1, Tomoko is out at a fast food place when some classmates show up. She was having a grand time by herself, but she starts catastrophizing about people's perception of her as a loner the instant they walk in. Keep in mind, this is the beginning of the series, where she is at her most socially anxious. This is a very good setup to highlight her social anxiety, but the payoff is that she pulls a funny face as a disguise and walks past them. I have quite a few problems with this. First, this isn't very funny. It's just not a very good joke. People online often say that they just can't laugh because they're feeling too much secondhand embarrassment, but I don't feel that in the slightest. Some of my favorite videos on YouTube are the Daxflame video diaries.
And so I'm thinking, what do I have to do? And it comes to me. I have to do something really funny, really awesome, and really good to make friends.
Second, this shouldn't be funny. It would work significantly better if it was a more sincere representation of social anxiety. When the primary obstacle of a character's life is constantly made light of, it's very hard to take seriously. Counterexample as to how this should work: a silent voice. This is a very lucky pick since they were released only 3 years apart and are both anime. The only difference is that A Silent Voice is a movie, which does affect how precise it can be in its production choices, but not enough for my point to be rendered null. Pay attention to how the subtle decisions affect the tone and mood as it relates to isolation. The sound design, which is basically absent in Watamote, is rich and communicative in A Silent Voice. The soundtrack, as well, is beautiful and fitting. Also, the aggressive post-processing really sells the overstimulation. Ishida's subtle mannerisms make him feel authentically anxious to escape conversation and the perceived ire from his peers. It actually shocked me how good of an example this was once I had gone looking for it for this video. These production choices are not present at all in Watamote. A small amount of this is budgetary, but I think most of it is just poor creative direction. And it's a shame. I really like a lot about Watamote. I like the character ideas, the premise, the character designs, the settings. It's all conceptually great. I especially like the slightly subtle queerness of Tomoko that she doesn't seem to recognize. Okay, on rewatch this isn't very subtle. But the show has none of the spice that makes it worth watching, and the writing is a bit bland, even plain bad at points, but that's hard to communicate without watching the show. Okay, this scene is good, actually. I think a major issue is the OST and sound design, which I said was poor a second ago, but I didn't really elaborate on. I've shown you a lot of footage from the show that looks okay, but I'll set the scene here for you. Tomoko just threatened to commit suicide. How should this scene sound? If you said Sonic underwater, then you would be correct. What is this music? People who like the show never really talk about the things I've mentioned. They say that the show is relatable, not that it's well-constructed or intelligent. But I want the shut-in, no-lifes of the world to have a better piece of media than this to represent themselves with. It's exaggerated, unintelligent, unfunny, poorly crafted, uses slurs. Seriously, who translated this? And is generally not a good show. Also, one final critique I have is the sexual content. I've been thinking the generation that survived the nukes all got irradiated into pedophiles. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't discriminate against the Japanese for having an age of consent at 14, then sexualizing every 15-year-old within arm's reach. I can get behind the idea of a show about a sexually frustrated adolescent, but I don't think that was quite the intent of the creators when they animated this shit. What is this? I actually had to cover my eyes when this appeared on screen. I'm not kidding, it's vile. So what did you think of the show? Did you watch it? Are you watching this because you're my friend named Travis? Share it in the comments. Whatever you think, at least the outro made a good sample for this song.